Welcome back again to Joe Stunner Boxing. How are you doing? Okay, yesterday we had Savannah Marshall and Claressa Shields coming face to face for their, sort of women's super fight, if that's the word you want to use. I don't know whether I'd use that word, but, the women's game is still growing, but this is definitely a step forward, not least of all because this whole card is going to be, I think, an all-women's card, promoted by Ben Shalom on Sky Sports. Big platform, and I think it's really, really positive stuff. And definitely the fight between Shields and Marshall is really intriguing, not least of all because these are two women who are so contrasting in fistic styles, in personalities. Obviously one's from America, one's from England, from the northeast. Probably her accent is indecipherable to Claressa, but where do we begin with this? Well, let's look at the press conference. They had the little war of words, my dad's bigger than your dad, or my mum's bigger than your mum, or, all that sort of playground crap. And it helps hype up the fight. I don't think they like each other. Claressa was her usual braggadocio self, had all her belts during the face-off afterwards. All the belts were strapped to her. She had her gold medals on her. She probably never leaves home without them. Probably sleeps with them. She doesn't have a duvet. She has all these belts on her bed. And during the press conference, she's banging on about how she's won 12 world titles and all this stuff. It's all relevant. I mean, if you want to big up your legacy, it's all relevant. And then there's Savannah with her one belt, her WBO belt. So, yeah, the person who's going to win in terms of career achievement so far is obviously Claressa Shields. But does that matter with this fight coming up? I don't think it does. I don't think it does, because in the past, we've seen, well, countless fighters who have been intimidated before the first bell has rung, because they see someone who's achieved so much and they've achieved so little. And unless you are that tiny, maybe only a few percent, maybe a fraction of 8%, who has the self-belief that you can go in there with the established fighters and beat the living hell out of them, unless you're part of that very small minority, you might feel intimidated. People used to go into the ring with the undefeated Mike Tyson, and they'd be, beaten before the first bell had rung. It's happened countless times, hundreds and hundreds, probably thousands and thousands of times. And some people are what Teddy Atlas used to call game quitters. They'll go in there, they'll give it a go, and they'll take a beating, but it's almost like they expected to take a beating, and they'll lose to the established champion. Now, I don't think Savannah Marshall is at that point mentally in her career or her life. The knock against Savannah Marshall used to be that when she was a young woman as an amateur, she would freeze on the big occasion. And she did. And Natasha Jonas was talking on Sky about this. She was saying that everybody admired Savannah Marshall so much, and if she'd only had more self-belief, she could have gone undefeated, because she was a real monster, a real killer. Big for the weight, hit extremely hard. But some people, their personality, their psyche doesn't fit the natural tools that they have. That is to say that some people may appear to be, and they may actually be, physically very strong, quite intimidating to look at, but they might be shy people, or they might be gentle people, or they might just not have much confidence. Now, Savannah Marshall comes across as a very shy person. She admits, I don't enjoy doing all the TV interviews, the internet interviews and so on. And probably when she was an amateur, she didn't like the spotlight. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's not the same as being scared. That's just, I'd rather just box behind closed doors. I like boxing, but I don't want to be under the lights. Some people don't want fame. There's this presumption that most people do. I think a lot of people don't, because they know that once you become famous, it's like having your face tattooed. It's with you for life. You can't go back to being anonymous. Not really. Although some famous people do get largely forgotten about, but usually it's, didn't you used to be so-and-so? Well, yeah, I still am, but. So I think Savannah Marshall, I think it's a mistake to say that Savannah Marshall is is scared of Claressa, or which Claressa claims she is, or the fact that she is naturally a more reserved personality and a more humble personality, I think it's a great mistake to say that she is not the more confident of the two. Now, it may be that Claressa is the more confident of the two. But when I say that, I don't base it on the fact that she straps all her belts to herself and puts her gold medals on and huffs and puffs and talks trash and all that crap. You know, that's good for beefing up a fight, for hyping it up. But it does not necessarily mean that you are the more confident of the two fighters. Have people forgotten how Manny Pacquiao used to be, or Chocolatito, or, you know, some of the great recent fighters? Then on the other hand, you had Floyd Mayweather, who was very braggadocious, used to talk a lot about humility. You know, it was all that, all praise to God and all that shit, you know, but he was anything but humble. Let's get it right. But he was brilliant. He was a brilliant fighter. No argument. But some people, you know, was he more confident than a Chocolatito or a Andre Ward, or, you know, someone who was a bit more reserved? No, not really. He was just very, very good. And there have been plenty of fighters who are, as this is the accusation from Savannah against Claressa, that Claressa is a bully. And interestingly, in one of the interviews I watched post-press conference, Savannah said, I've seen the way Claressa talks to her team, and they're like little gophers. She's got no respect for them. She's got no humility. She's not humble. Now, that may be true, but on the other hand, maybe that's just her manner. I'm not saying it's necessarily the right manner, but it doesn't necessarily mean that she's lacking confidence. Sometimes it does. Sometimes empty vessels make the most noise. But I found it very difficult watching these two extremely contrasting women go at it in the press conference. Who was the more confident? I don't think either of them was lacking in confidence. I think they're both quite confident. I don't think you should make the mistake that because Claressa is the louder and the brasher, that she's you know, quote unquote, won the verbals, the press conference verbals. I don't think these press conferences really matter a great deal most of the time anyway. And I think a lot of what's called mind games by a lot of people is vastly exaggerated. I don't think that, I mean, a lot of people say Tyson Fury's great at mind games. Well, I suppose he is if you're a weak-minded person in the opposite corner, or if you're just not a very bright person in the opposite corner. But I personally, if I was, you know, in the opposing corner to Tyson Fury and I had the physical attributes of someone who was capable of beating him, I wouldn't find any of that verbals particularly intimidating. Well, I wouldn't find it intimidating at all. I think in the case of Marshall and Shields, it's too early to tell who's going to. Actually, I'll go as far as to say I don't think either of them will have the verbal upper hand. I don't think any of this will make any difference when the opening bell goes. I think they're both very capable women. I think Marshall clearly hits harder. Shields doesn't hit hard at all. She's only got 2 KOs on her record, although she has faced consistently good women. Marshall clearly has a big punch. I think she's probably going to be the bigger, physically stronger in there. I think the quality of Claressa's punches isn't as good as Marshall's. But she's tough. She's determined. She fires a lot of punches. A lot of them are wide, swinging punches. I'm not going to make a prediction. Well, I've actually mentioned who I think is going to win this in past videos, but I won't go into it just yet. But in terms of women's boxing, I think this is a real step forward, because earlier in the year we had Amanda Serrano, Katie Taylor. Fantastic fight, fantastic event. They got $1 million each, which is a very, very considerable amount of money for women. It proves that women's boxing is growing. Only someone who is, at best, naive would compare the men's game to the women's game, because the women's game in this current incarnation of it is 12 years old, 15 years old, maybe tops, 10 to 15 years old. The men's game, of course, has evolved over 135 years, roughly. gloved era. So to compare the two is kind of facile. It's an asinine argument, but it does show that the women, $2 million purses for each woman, a kind of a super fight. Taylor, Serrano, off the back of that, we've now got this, and I think this is a very, very attractive fight because of the contrast of the two women, and I'm really, really looking forward to it. I really am. I think it's going to be a good fight. And I'm tempted to say who I think is going to win. You know who I think is going to win, don't you? But anyway, we'll see. I could be wrong, of course. But yeah. What did you think? Did you see the press conference? Did you see any of the after the conference interviews that both the girls did? I thought they were quite good as well. Again, they showed a total contrast of the personalities. But I think the psyche of both these women is really quite similar. They both want to go at each other, and I don't think they really like each other. Someone said to Claressa during the press conference, "Do you hate Savannah?" And she says, "Well, I think she said her grandmother told her not to hate people, but I don't like her at all." And there's no denying that even the shy girl Savannah, she's struggling to hide her contempt for Claressa, who she did describe as a bully. But maybe that's just cultural differences. Maybe where Claressa comes from, people are like that. They speak like that. They are loud. They are brash. Whereas from where Savannah comes from, there's a lot more stock put in being humble, in being quieter, in being more reserved, in still waters running deep. We'll see. What do you think? Leave your comments below. Good fight coming. I can't wait for this one. I think this is a great fight. Men or women, I don't care. I think this is just a great, great fight. Let me know what you think. If you're new to the channel, subscribe. Hit the subscribe button. Takes a second. Please, please subscribe. And like the video if you like the video. And we'll speak again sometime soon. Thanks for watching as always, and take care of yourselves. Bye for now.